Okay, guys, welcome to today's lesson. This is the last crew member we're going to be covering in this course, and he's a very important one. That's the editor. I have postponed talking about the editor for a while because the editor doesn't really begin working until the movie's being shot, because that's what he was going to work with the film itself. And the bulk of the work of this person is done after the movie has been shot. That's where this person is going to work his or her magic. The editor is a pivotal person in a film production. A film editor is like a mechanic that removes the unneeded parts of the movie and fits pieces of film together to make a finished movie. So the guy that turns all that footage that was recorded into a movie is that guy, the editor. The editor is an artist who captures the director's vision and tells a compelling story. So far, the director has shot all the scene that he or she wanted to shoot, but they have footage. Remember, they're not telling a story yet until it ends up in this guy's hands. The way that a story unfolds and grabs the attention of an audience is one of the most important elements of filmmaking, because in films, we tell stories. So to ensure that the story flows effortlessly from beginning to the end, each shot is carefully chosen and edited into a series of scenes that are in turn assembled to create the finished film. Here you have a list of shots from a very famous movie called Psycho. It's one of the most iconic horror movies of all time by Alfred Hitchcock. And this movie is usually this scene of the shower, the famous shower scene, is presented as one of the most impressive pieces of editing ever done. It is a very violent scene because they're killing a woman that's taking a shower, but it is shown in a way that is not graphic, but it is still very powerful and very disturbing. Has anybody seen Psycho, which is this movie?
No.
No. Okay. Well,
No.
but I mean, even people that have not seen Psycho, this is the very famous shower scene where the woman is taking a bath and she's running away from the cops, and she's in a hotel, and this hotel is owned by a serial killer, right? And the showers moves aside, and this woman's being stabbed, but you don't see a single stab taking place. It is rather suggested, and the camera shows the sink where the water is whirlpooling down, and it has a very impressive dissolve, as you can see here, where the sink dissolves into the eye of the dead person, of the victim, and then the camera pulls away from the eye. It's an extreme close-up shot, and then it pulls away to reveal the face of the woman as she is like facing the floor, dead. And it's very compelling. And the magic was done with the editing. Editors work very long hours and under pressure because, as you know, the clock is ticking, and they are employed as freelancers. Like almost everybody in a crew, they're freelancers. They don't necessarily work for the studio. They are hired by the producer based on their reputation and their experience. Editors are going to be working very closely with the director before the shooting begins. And while the shooting is taking place, definitely, because they make the dailies, you know that we spoke about the dailies. At the end of the shooting day, they take the footage that was shot and they put some shots together. The editor cuts some of it and puts it together to show it to the actors so they can see the day's work. During production,
Víctor, una
they
pregunta.
start putting together some of the shots, but then they're going to be working on editing after the movie been shot. Somebody has a question, right?
Yo.
Go ahead, Mr. Roman.
Una pregunta. Él, cuando acaban la película, ¿a él le sueltan un montón de shoots? ¿O él va poco a poco organizándola? ¿O a él le sueltan todo el trabajo y él poco a poco va haciendo todo?
Well, it's a combination. You know, He gets to work as it comes in, as it is shot. But, sir, it is an insane amount of footage. I don't know if you know it or not, but your typical 2 hour movie, you see a movie that lasts like 2 hours. How many hours of footage do you think the editor has to work with on average?
A lot, porque
No, but what a lot is not a number. Give me a number. I'm talking 2 hour movie. Like how many hours of footage do you think that guy or that lady is working with?
tiene
Typically.
que ser un trabajo bastante fuerte, porque si en un día solamente hacen 3 minutos de película.
We're talking on average like 400 hours of film.
¿Qué?
And they take those 400 hours of film and they reduce it usually to a 2 hour movie. Take or give some minutes. It's insane. So the amount of work that an editor is doing is a lot, and it requires a great level of concentration. Sir, I've edited movies and the days go like they disappear, like what happened? Because you're so focused. You need to have tunnel vision. You have to like forget everything else, but it is so engaging. I love editing. And I'm sure that if some of you ever get a chance to edit, some of you will love it because it is so creative. You ask yourself, what if I cut this here and put it there? Or I make this transition, or I put this in this particular order. And the variety of the options are countless. They're almost infinite for you to tell the story you want to tell. So that's why we say that the work that editor does is almost equal to that of the director. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Yes, yes, ya entendí.
Okay. Yeah, it's beautiful work. Editing is beautiful work. It's like building a puzzle. So the first day of principal photography, the editor begins work by looking at the previous day's rushes, what we call the dailies, and they begin like synchronizing and cutting the images and aligning the sound and all that. And usually, editor work with someone who is going to be his assistant, someone who's going to help. There are two types of editing. In the past, I want to remind you, there was no digital photography. So they actually used real film, celluloid. And the way that they did it was the old fashioned way, a pair of scissors, glue, and tape. That's how editing was done back in the day. You see that guy there in that picture?
Sí,
You
viste,
see,
pero si
he's
son
looking at the film.
400 horas, ¿cuántos rollitos ellos tenían que picar y acomodar y
Well, I don't
poner?
know, but remember what I gave you is an average, give or take. But that's an average. It could be more, it could be less. I personally have not shot hundreds of hours, but I can tell you that uh, in our short films, and we're not professional at all by a stretch of the imagination. We're amateurs, and we have like sometimes we have like 6, 7 hours of film of footage for a 15 minute or 20-minute movie. But that's how a movie is made, Mr. Roman. Editing is all about cutting. It's like surgery. You know what surgery is? When a doctor needs to get rid of something. Well, surgery is the art of cutting the human body with a high degree of precision. That's how a surgeon makes his life. He's cutting something out of you, but he does it with such art and such expertise that they make you feel better. They save your life. They improve your health. Uh, this is surgery, sir, but you're doing it on a movie. And the way that you make a movie better, believe it or not, is cutting it. You'll not believe it until you do it. Let me make this better. Let me cut a little bit here. And so all of a sudden it's better. If you did it right. If you cut too much, then you're going to mess it up. Okay? You just don't cut like crazy. Sometimes you have to cut a hair, and I really mean it. a hair can make a difference between good editing and bad editing. It's very precise work, but it's beautiful. Um, so this type of editing is what we call linear. Linear because that's how you work with the film. The film is a long strip of celluloid, and there's no other way to work with a celluloid film. It was very time consuming. It could have been tedious, but it was highly specialized work. And while some people still do linear editing today, that's not the norm. The norm today is non-linear because most of today's um, editing is done in a computer. So that means that you don't have to like to rewind and fast forward. You don't have to go like to move on from the beginning to a certain point. You can access any part of the film whenever you want to when it's digital. So that I find that incredibly efficient. It's very it saves time because you can go straight for what you want. You don't waste time like rewinding something. You know what the word rewinding means, right? Does anybody know what that means? Rewind and fast forward.
Yes, rewind, go back.
Yes, I
There's
know
someone that
what's
does not
that.
understand those terms. Back in the day, guys, most media came like in a cassette, like in a video cassette. And for you to reach a certain part, you had to spool it. Toilet paper. Imagine a roll of toilet paper. If you want to get to the
Ya
middle,
sé.
if you want to get to the middle, what do you have to do?
Pues
Dale
moverlo,
vuelta.
moverlo.
You have to spool it. There's no way for you to get automatically to the middle of that roll. You have to spool it, right? Well, that's how a video cassette worked. You have to like spool it to get there, and that took time. But nowadays, that's not how it's done. You can immediately go to any part of the movie that you want immediately without it affecting anything. Is that going to save time? Oh, you bet it will. It will save time. So the type of editing that we have in computers is called NLE, non-linear editing. Okay, there's a video there that explains it. So you need to watch it. Remember that you have to watch videos. And instead of going in set order, you're able to work on any segment of the project that you want to. I'm when I edit, back then when you did linear editing, you had to edit from the beginning to the end. Nowadays, you don't have to edit that way. You know how I edit? I begin in the beginning, and then I go to the end, and then I start editing in between the middle and the end, between the beginning and the end. There's something I asked you guys to do in the last lesson. I asked you to take a picture and do something to it. Did you do it?
Yo instalé la aplicación
Yo bajé la aplicación
y la
y
miré
tiré un par de
para
fotos y
Yeah,
probarla.
but
hice un par de cosas.
yeah, you looked at it and you freaked out and you ran away. That's what happened to me the first time I saw an editing. I saw it and I said, okay. And I ran away. And then I came back and let me touch it a little bit and let me poke it around a little bit. But guys, it's not gonna bite you. It's not gonna bite you. It's very easy, it's very simple. Did
Yo lo intenté,
anybody
yo le tiré silla a yo le tiré fotos a mi silla, la
okay, but
corté
okay,
y
you
hice un
took
par
the
de cosas.
pictures, but that's not what I'm talking about. Once you took those pictures, did you take one of those pictures and do anything to it?
Yo intenté, pero
Sí,
no sé
sí.
bregar con eso.
Well, guys, you have to, who taught you how to use a cell phone? Who
Pues yo
taught
mismo.
who taught you how to use a remote control? You know the answer, right? No one. No one. And no one has to teach you how to like do that. Just have to like do it. Take your fears,
Yo empecé
catch
a
them
hundir
aside.
botones a lo loco a ver qué cada cosa hacía.
I'm sorry.
Yo empecé a hundir cualquier cosita que encontraba a ver para qué era, para qué servía.
Exactly. That's how you do it, dude. So you just go ahead and just, I mean, what if you mess up the picture? What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, that you lost that picture. And I told you can use a picture you don't necessarily like or want. So what do you lose? Like nothing. You have like nothing to lose and everything to gain. So guys, I'm going to ask you again, you need to begin messing around with this because very soon you're going to start editing footage. I'm not kidding, guys. I mean it because I cannot imagine you finishing this course without you having done something that you can look at and say, okay, I did this. This class is not, this year, I had to speak so much because cinematography is more about doing, not speaking, okay? But the situation has tied our hands. But so if I tell you guys, do something to a picture, do it. Do it. Did anybody do anything to a picture? Jaden, Kairi, anybody, Sebastian, anybody?
Try to change a little bit of the colors.
What did you do, madam? Say that again.
I tried to change a little bit of the colors so they give you like a lot of.
So let me tell you, at the end of the day, it ended up looking different.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look better.
great. So why don't you take that? Why don't you take another picture and do a little bit more? Get adventurous. Say, you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and do a little extra thing. And was it difficult?
Not really. I just touched a lot of buttons.
Exactly. That's all it is. Let me push this button. Let me see what it does. Let me slide this to the side to see what happened to the picture. That's all it takes. A little bit of experimentation. So do that today. Do that today, guys. So we have different kinds of cuts. And the first cut that you see in a movie is what we call the rough cut because it's rough. It's the first one. Later, as you keep on cutting up the movie, it's going to be like refined. The picture that you see here is a picture of a nonlinear editing software in a computer. You take all the footage, you throw it there in a folder, and you start assembling it in a line and putting it together. It's like building a puzzle, guys. It's a lot of fun. And you have a track for the sound, and you have a track for the images for the video. There's also something called the director's cut, which is not always necessarily the studio cut, right? And that's very common thing nowadays. There was a time when it was not a thing, and the guy that began the director's cut was this guy here, director Ridley Scott, with a movie called Blade Runner, where he made that movie. It's one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. And he had his idea of what the movie was supposed to look like. But the studio wanted a different version. So they threw out their version in the theaters. And some years later, they allowed him to put his version of the movie out on video. And you know which version was better? The studios or the directors? Which one do you think?
The directors.
The director's cut. Yeah, the director's cut was better than the studios version. It's a fantastic movie. If you ever have a chance to see it, it's one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made. It's called Blade Runner. There's also the final cut. That is the one that is approved by the studio. That's the one the studio wants. What happens if a director hates the final cut? Let's say that he made the movie, but the studio interfered so much that the director says, you know what? I don't want my name on this movie anymore because it's not right. It's not really my vision. It's not really what I wanted it to be. It's what the studio wants, but it's not really what I want. What can a director do in that case if they say, I don't want my name on it?
Anuncia, ¿no?
No, they got paid and all that. They did their work already. But still, remember, they're putting that thing out there and it has your name on it. That's the thing. You made that movie, you have a reputation, that thing is out there and you're not happy. What can you do? You can have your name changed. What name? The name that you see there. What name is that? What name do you see there?
Alan Smith.
Guys, can you read the name, please?
Alan Smith.
Alan Smithy. Does Alan Smithy exist?
No.
No,
Probably not.
no. So that's a name that you use if you're unhappy. Like for example, David Lynch made Dune in 1984, and it was released in the theater. But then the studio wanted to release an extended version that was horrific, horrible. And he said, "I don't want my name on that junk. I don't want my name on that. That's not the movie I made. That's something else." So they changed the name to Alan Smithy. Who made that movie? Alan Smithy. Got that? So that's a name you can use if you're not happy with release. Um, there are other cuts. A cut is, sorry, there are transitions. What's a transition? When one image moves on to another. Because a movie is made up of different images. You put them together and one moves to the other. The most famous transition is the cut. For example, you edit a conversation between two people and you show their faces. There's one shot where you see the one person talking, and then you see another shot where you see the other person talking. And you see that it happens immediately. Like you stop seeing one person, quickly you see the other. That's called a cut. That's the most basic and most beautiful and most surgical and most commonly used transition of all. There are other transitions like the fade in, where you see, or the dissolve, where you see that one image slowly becomes another. You can see this below. Like you see, for example, a bunch of apples, and you see how the apples start dissolving into a scene where you see a desert with, I don't know what you call that, an emu or whatever it's called. Um, I don't know what you call that type of bull, um, or yak. You see, where you can see the dissolve that better is in the middle, the picture that's in the middle. You see how one image transitions gradually into the other. Well, that's called a fade in, fade out, or a dissolve.
Eso,
And then you
eso
have,
lo usan mucho en los muñequitos.
it's correct, but it's used not very much because each transition has a meaning. The kind of cut that you should do the most is the type of transition that you should do most is the cut, because they all have their own meaning. Sometimes you have fade ins and fade outs. Fade ins and fade out mean that time has passed or that you are in a place that is far away. So you need to be careful the way you use that. I'm not a big fan of using those fancy, smashy transitions. You should stay away from that like a plague. They are not cinematic. The dissolve that I just mentioned, the dissolve, there's the wipe. Like this is a scene from Star Wars, A New Hope. This is very old fashioned. This is something I have never done and I never plan to use that. It's very old fashioned. They was using Star Wars because Star Wars was paying homage to very old style movies when it came out. So they wanted the movie to look a little bit like old fashioned. So they use many wipes. And they use very successfully, but I don't recommend that you use that. And another one that you used to see in cartoons very, very long ago is the iris, where you see that like a little hole
Sí,
opens or closes, like in this animated cartoon of Betty Boop.
como los muñequitos de Mickey, que sale Mickey cantando en el
Yeah, or
barco.
Betty Boop. You have Betty Boop and Bimbo right there. Yeah. And this will be the reshoot that you have to upload, guys. And that will be it.